Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases. Today's submitted material is an intermediate to advanced English lesson presentation from SpeakDuo, featuring 10 idiomatic expressions and corresponding breakout room prompts.
And just real quick, you can head over to SpeakDuo.com to meet people from all around the world practicing on video calls to, become more confident speaking English.
Right. So jumping right into our first critique, a fundamental thematic disconnect exists between the presentation's title and its core vocabulary content.
Yeah.
The material advertises itself as a lesson centered entirely around sleep. It's literally titled Sleep is Your Superpower, referencing that Matt Walker TED Talk.
Right, the TED Talk.
But then, the vast majority of the expressions, like every nook and cranny or go head to head, they're just general business or life idioms. They have absolutely no contextual relationship to the stated topic.
Well, let me jump in here. Is there a risk that focusing solely on thematic alignment might overlook what these specific students actually need?
How so?
Well, if this is an intermediate to advanced demographic, they're probably working professionals, right?
Yeah, likely.
So they probably need to know how to use corporate jargon like go head to head much more urgently than they need highly specific sleep idioms. So shouldn't the creator just keep these high-value phrases and, ditch the sleep theme entirely?
That is a really fair point about audience needs, actually. But it sort of ignores the cognitive mechanics of how we acquire language.
Okay, schema theory and all that?
Exactly, schema theory. Like, imagine you sit down at a high-end restaurant, right? And you order a tasting menu titled A Journey Through the Mediterranean.
Sounds nice.
Right? Your palate is primed for olive oil, citrus, seafood. But if the very first course they serve is a heavy Texas barbecue brisket, it's just completely disorienting.
Yeah, that would be weird.
And the same thing happens in a language learner's brain. When a student reads "Sleep is your superpower," their brain immediately opens a specific mental file folder.
Right, they're building a scaffolding.
Yes, they're ready to hang sleep-related concepts on it. So when the instructor suddenly throws in every nook and cranny, it essentially shatters that scaffolding because the brain just has nowhere to logically place it.
Exactly.
Which creates immense cognitive load. It's just incredibly inefficient for memory retention. So the suggestion here is to make a definitive choice. Realign the vocabulary to specifically serve the thematic promise of the title.
To create a cohesive narrative.
Right, which helps students remember the vocabulary through strong thematic association. Or, go the other route.
Make the menu match the meal.
Exactly. If you want to keep the sleep theme, provide concrete examples of advanced phrases directly related to the topic. Teach things like burning the candle at both ends or out like a light.
Or losing sleep over something.
Yeah, perfect. Alternatively, if you absolutely must keep this specific list of high-value business vocabulary, then simply change the lesson title to accurately reflect the content.
Like calling it Essential Idioms for Workplace Challenges or something.
Exactly. Don't promise a TED Talk about the science of sleep and then deliver a corporate survival guide.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, even if you fix that thematic alignment, we still have to look closely at the depth of the content itself.
Right.
Which brings us to the next point. The vocabulary definitions and practice prompts lack the comparative nuance necessary for advanced English learners to truly master and deploy these idioms.
Yeah, the weakness here is that the material provides these overly simplistic, single-sentence definitions that completely fail to explain the subtle connotations.
Like the phrase ace something. On the slide, it's simply defined as to do extremely well on a task.
And the practice questions are just as basic. What could you ace without much effort? It only requires basic, single-sentence recall. It doesn't challenge an advanced speaker at all.
That makes sense, but could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like maybe advanced students just need a quick textual reminder of the phrase before jumping into conversation.
You'd think so. But an advanced learner generally already knows the basic dictionary meaning of a word. What they actually need to understand is the pragmatic usage.
The how and the why?
Exactly. They need to know when to use it, who it's appropriate to use it with, and why they should choose it over a simpler alternative. Giving them a one-dimensional definition is like giving someone the keys to a sports car, but only letting them drive in a 15-mile-per-hour school zone.
They aren't experiencing the mechanics of the machine.
Right. And they end up translating the phrase directly from their native language, which we call L1 interference in linguistics.
Because nuance rarely maps perfectly one-to-one between languages.
Exactly. So the suggestion is to incorporate comparative analysis against similar phrases and elevate the practice scenarios to mirror complex, real-world speaking environments.
Let's give some concrete examples of that comparative analysis.
Yeah, let's do it.
For instance, you can't just define pulling an all-nighter as working late. You really must contrast pulling an all-nighter with working overtime.
We're burning the midnight oil.
Right. You need to explain that pulling an all-nighter specifically implies staying awake until the sun actually comes up. And it carries this connotation of desperate academic deadlines or chaotic startup culture.
Whereas working overtime is just a standard corporate reality. It just means staying at the office until, 7 or 8 p.m. It lacks the desperation of an all-nighter.
Yeah. Or take the phrase, go head-to-head. If you just define it as to disagree, a student might use it inappropriately.
You have to explain the register.
Exactly. You don't go head-to-head with your spouse over what to eat for dinner. You go head-to-head in a fierce rivalry, like a corporate bidding war.
And that deeper understanding naturally means we need more sophisticated practice. Instead of asking, what could you ace? Require students to demonstrate the phrases in high-level scenarios.
Like framing the practice around an IELTS speaking part 2 response.
Yes, where they have to tell a sustained 2-minute story. A prompt could be, describe a time you had to go head-to-head with someone at work, explain how you prepared, and describe what the silver lining was.
That forces them to use the vocabulary structurally, not just as a trivia answer.
Exactly. Or simulate a conversation with a boss about a strict deadline, requiring them to navigate that power dynamic while talking about pulling an all-nighter.
Right. But, even if you teach that pragmatic nuance perfectly in the middle of the lesson, it's kind of useless if that knowledge just evaporates when they log off.
Which brings us to the final phase of the presentation. The live workshop currently lacks a robust, immediate mechanism to actively test the learner's retention of the nuanced definitions at the end of the session.
Yeah. Is the connection between the active learning phase in the breakout rooms and the long-term retention fully established in the material? Or is that an area to potentially bolster?
It's definitely an area to bolster. Right now, it just ends with a slide saying thanks for coming and mentions an external post-lesson PDF quiz.
Which, let's be honest, busy adults are never going to open.
Never. The weakness is that relying solely on breakout rooms and an external quiz means the instructor loses the chance to verify comprehension collectively and correct misunderstandings while everyone is still in the room.
It's like writing a brilliant essay and forgetting to hit save before you unplug your computer. The forgetting curve starts the second that video call ends.
Plus, instructors can't monitor every breakout room. If a student spends 10 minutes using go head-to-head incorrectly and there's no final review, that mistake fossilizes.
So the suggestion is to implement a structured, interactive multiple-choice quiz directly within the presentation's final slides.
Give students time to think and immediately reinforce the correct usage.
And the distractors, the wrong options, they need to be highly realistic, conversational traps that test the specific nuances we just talked about.
Exactly. Let's actually model what this live quiz should sound like. We'll run through the phrases and really show how to test that nuance.
Yeah, let's do the whole list of 8 phrases right here. And as we're doing this, listener, feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer, just like a student might need a moment.
Okay, question 1. What is the best definition for the expression to pull an all-nighter? Option A, to stay entirely awake throughout the absolute entire night in order to finish your studying or complete a project.
Option B, to physically, safely relocate all of your personal items into a brand new apartment during the extremely late hours.
Or option C, to suddenly experience a severe, massive drop in your physical stamina directly after finishing a demanding marathon.
Take a second.
So the answer for to pull an all-nighter is option A, to stay entirely awake throughout the absolute entire night in order to finish your studying or complete a project.
Right, and here, the instructor would remind them, remember our IELTS example about pulling an all-nighter to finish that massive presentation before the morning deadline?
Exactly. It locks the memory in. All right, question 2. How is the phrase to ace something accurately defined? Option A, to totally successfully manually delete highly sensitive corporate documentation safely before a massive public leak.
Option B, to perform exceptionally well or totally successfully achieve an incredibly high final score on a task or big exam.
Or option C, to deliberately, violently, entirely permanently disrupt an organized public gathering in order to draw prompt notice.
Pause if you need to.
And the correct answer for to ace something is option B, to perform exceptionally well or totally successfully achieve an incredibly high final score on a task or big exam.
And the reminder here could be just like we practice when talking about how to ace a difficult certification test for your job.
Perfect. Question 3. If you go head-to-head with someone, what exactly are you doing? Option A, to actively, rapidly, effectively, thoroughly utilize a remarkably great initial idea to make further project progress.
Option B, to completely mistakenly entirely burn up all your absolute best energy reserves long before they are truly needed.
Or option C, to actively, fiercely, directly, aggressively compete against another specific rival individual in a highly close match.
Feel free to pause here.
The answer for go head-to-head is option C, to actively, fiercely, directly, aggressively compete against another specific rival individual in a highly close match.
Reminding them of that corporate bidding war example we talked about earlier.
Right. Moving on, question 4. What does a person mean when they find a silver lining? Option A, a surprisingly encouraging positive aspect or highly hopeful sign discovered within a generally terrible situation.
Option B, a remarkably expensive and incredibly rare culinary element exclusively utilized by highly trained restaurant chefs.
Or option C, a thoroughly detailed and exceptionally complex financial investigation safely launched into a severe company error.
Take a moment to think.
So finding a silver lining is option A, a surprisingly encouraging positive aspect or highly hopeful sign discovered within a generally terrible situation.
Yeah, like finding a silver lining when your project gets delayed, but it gives you time to actually improve the final product.
Exactly. Question 5. Which of the following describes what it means to do a deep dive? Option A, a remarkably sudden, entirely unexpected physical collapse of a highly complicated, massive architectural new pillar.
Option B, a completely thorough, remarkably detailed, and highly comprehensive academic examination of a specific study topic.
Or option C, a completely unexpected financial disaster directly resulting from an intensely irresponsible overseas bank mistake.
Go ahead and pause if you need to.
The answer for doing a deep dive is option B, a completely thorough, remarkably detailed, and highly comprehensive academic examination of a specific study topic.
Like doing a deep dive into the analytics before a marketing presentation?
Oh, that's a great example. Okay, question 6. What occurs when you search every nook and cranny? Option A, to actively, completely, properly, verbally, securely share something that has been intensely, deeply worrying you today.
Option B, to safely, securely, consistently contain highly volatile chemical substances inside an underground fortified facility.
Or option C, absolutely every single tiny, highly concealed, or remarkably difficult to physically reach section within a room.
Pause if you need a second.
So searching every nook and cranny is option C, absolutely every single tiny, highly concealed, or remarkably difficult to physically reach section within a room.
Just like searching every nook and cranny of your office when you lose your keys before a meeting.
We've all been there. Question 7. What does it mean if you happen to toss and turn? Option A, to continuously, physically, rapidly move around highly restlessly in your bed simply because you just cannot sleep.
Option B, to systematically, efficiently, safely organize a remarkably complicated corporate process into manageable new parts.
Or option C, to deliberately, completely, purposefully, actively ruin an ongoing professional plan or totally destroy a huge launch.
Pause if needed.
The definition for to toss and turn is option A, to continuously, physically, rapidly move around
highly restlessly in your bed simply because you just cannot sleep.
Reminding the students of, tossing and turning the night before a huge interview because of nerves.
Exactly. And finally, question 8, what happens when someone decides to catch up on something? Option A, to intentionally, completely, successfully, safely transfer highly sensitive corporate paperwork to an outside office.
Option B, to intentionally properly spend extra dedicated time finally doing a specific task that you have fallen behind on.
Or option C, to aggressively, violently, purposely, permanently, fiercely disrupt an organized public gathering to draw fast notice.
Take a final moment to think.
The answer for to catch up on something is option B, to intentionally properly spend extra dedicated time finally doing a specific task that you have fallen behind on.
Like deciding to catch up on your emails over the weekend because your inbox has just been overflowing.
Exactly. And that is how you run the quiz. Doing this live, right before they log off, acts as the first crucial repetition in the memory consolidation process.
Because by reading the options out loud and repeating the target phrase, the instructor builds a strong audio association.
Right, and it provides immediate collective feedback. If half the class guesses the wrong distractor, you instantly know you need to take 30 seconds to re-clarify before closing the room.
It completely transforms the end of the lesson from a passive goodbye into this active, high-value retention exercise.
It really does. So, to quickly summarize the actionable steps for improving this lesson material, first, align your vocabulary perfectly with your thematic title to avoid cognitive dissonance.
You have to allow the students to build a cohesive mental schema.
Exactly. Second, elevate your instruction by providing nuanced comparisons, like contrasting working overtime with pulling an all-nighter, and utilize complex, real-world IELTS or workplace examples rather than basic dictionary definitions.
And third, do not let them leave without hitting save on their memory. Build that immediate interactive multiple-choice quiz into the final slides.
Using conversational, highly plausible distractors to cement retention and correct misunderstandings before they log off.
Yeah, that's the key.
We highly encourage you to implement these structural and pedagogical changes into your presentation. Please submit your revised lesson deck back to us for further review so we can see how these adjustments elevate the learning experience.